And here you're telling us how you want to make cars for $20,000 a piece. How do you do that?
Well, we've not formally announced our next car program, so I can't talk too much about our upcoming vehicle program or programs that have not been announced, but we do expect to make cars that are more affordable than the current Model 3 or Model Y. So, and a big factor in this is, but I think by far the biggest factor is autonomy, and in terms of the value of a car, because right now cars get driven for about 10 or 12 hours a week, like maybe 1.5 hours a day, and but there's 168 hours in a week, and so if they were autonomous, you could probably the cars could drive for 50 or 60 hours, so you would see a 5-fold increase in the utility of the car, that can do autonomy. This is a really, really gigantic thing. It would also mean that we wouldn't need anywhere near as many parking lots, and this would also be helpful for the environment because you would need far fewer cars.
So I misspoke. It was a $7 billion investment for a plant that makes 1 million cars a year that makes $15 billion a year in profits. So you invest $7 billion and you make $15 billion a year. Who does that? And for a plant that makes, things, manufacturing. And so the way this is accomplished is that, so you're doing it with casting right now. And casting half of the car, and you can soon cast the other half of the car. And other companies, why don't they try? Why don't they try to do what we're doing? In fact, one of the executives of another automobile company wanted me to introduce her to you, and you did that once at a meeting, and now she wants to come visit with her director of engineering at our plant in Austin. And I presume when I ask you, you're going to say, yeah, bring her on, because you innovate so fast, by the time anyone copies what we're doing, we're on to something else. What else is there? When you're casting, what else is there that enables us to make it cheaper? Are we eliminating a lot of other parts? Are we eliminating functions? What are we doing to do that? How do we sell a car that's so cheap?
I think the full explanation, or at least an accurate explanation, would take a long time, because first approximation, a car is made of 10,000 unique parts and process steps, and Tesla is really, I think at this point, probably the best at manufacturing in the auto industry, which I think what nobody was expecting.
Probably in the history of the world.
Probably.
So let's go to Twitter just for a minute, and we'll go back to this stuff, which is more interesting to me.
I try to get out of the deal.
Well, you told me you wanted to ask...
to get out. Get back in. I reminded that scene from The Godfather, basically.
But you told me you wanted to ask tough questions.
I tried.
So on Twitter.
What could possibly go wrong?
So I saw this article. It says you bought something called Twitter. And it says, Musk puts off lifting Twitter bans. And so obviously the big deal, to me anyway, in Twitter is that, we have this incredible, so it was incredibly poorly managed, this business. And, but those guys somehow did great for their shareholders by selling it to us. Right? But we didn't buy what they're selling. We bought something of what it's going to become.
Yes. I think it's, most people would say, given how the market has evolved this year, the price is on the high side.
Right. Right. But that's on the basis of what it is.
Yes. But in terms of what I think there is a tremendous amount of potential that it will be very difficult to achieve, but I think possible. And I think ultimately it could be one of the most valuable companies in the world.
So when we think about this, in order for that to happen, I met you, and it took me a few years, and then I believe in you in your heart, right? Your heart. And so,
I think you were skeptical. At our first meeting, you were a bit skeptical.
and so the way I think about it is that, so I'm trusting you with the future of our country, of the world, actually, when you're in charge of a media like that. And so what I think about is, so how do you prevent, to being Jewish, how do you prevent this anti-Semitism? Or if I were black, how do you prevent all of the... So how do you prevent the use of the N-word? And when I think about TikTok, and they're able, we're just looking at pictures, to tell what you're going to do. You know, you move your left arm, you move your right arm, what other pictures you like. That's what they do with their software, and they grade their algorithm. How can we not have an amazing algorithm? Because we know more about than we do with TikTok, and we ought to know what interests people have. And because of that, in words, we should be able to figure out words that people are using, what that means, and considering what content they're interested in. We should be able to figure out with software how to moderate this and prevent that from happening. Is that true or not?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Totally agree. I want to be clear. Content moderation policies have not changed at Twitter, and it is not okay to engage in hateful conduct on Twitter. So we have had actually oddly targeted attacks where temporarily people have been able to put some hate speech on Twitter, but then it's been taken down immediately. So now, part of what I'm trying to achieve with this sort of enabling everyone to be payment verified with Twitter Blue is to try to get as many people payment verified as possible. It's only $8 a month, although for some people that are complaining about that, these are people who pay more than that for their latte.
I'm going to be one of your Twitter Blue customers.
Thank you. But as part of its revenue, part of it is payment authentication. And so if somebody, because there is a huge problem with spam and bots and trolls on Twitter, and organizations trying to manipulate public opinion, and just generally making the system worse. And I think that there is an answer to that, which is to get as many regular users of Twitter to be a subscriber for $8 a month. And you'll get a lot more than just the blue check mark for $8 a month, because now we can afford long-form video, long audio, podcasts, and we can also start sharing revenue with content creators, which is essential.
Give them a chance to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so, I mean, right now, if you're on Twitter, you'll see a lot of links posted to YouTube and TikTok, and that's because, at least until now, Twitter has not even given them enough video length to post their video, and then they give the content creators no means of monetizing the video. So we're going to change that rapidly at Twitter. It's going to be transformative. But if we can get enough verified users, and we're going to prioritize Twitter search, replies, mentions by verified users first, and this is very.
And that's what calls amplified.
Yes. So if you're payment verified with blue checkmark, then you're prioritized, and so this is the point of this is to make crime not to pay, because right now to create a bot on Twitter costs less than a penny. So the cost of crime is so cheap, and that's part of why crime and hateful conduct pays. But if somebody risks losing even $8, it's too expensive to now have 100,000 fake accounts. They have to spend $800,000 a month, as opposed to $800 a month. So, and then we also, since we're using payment authentication, we're piggybacking on the authentication system of the payment system, and we're also piggybacking off of Apple's authentication system, which is another layer of security. So the net effect will be, over time, that the the verified users will pretty much always be at the top of comments and search, and you won't really see. You'll have to scroll far to see the unverified users, which will be the bots and trolls and whatnot. And this is sort of analogous to Google search. Like, if you go to page 8 of Google search, there will be a ton of scams and stuff, call it page 8, page 9, something like that. But the thing is that Google search results are so good for page 1 that you never go to page 8. Or it's rare. And like the old joke is like,
So if something we don't want to see, it gets pushed way down.
yeah, basically the bad stuff gets pushed way down. And then crime stops paying, and they stop trying to do all these things.
And we can recruit them as engineers to program for us, crime guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, the joke is like, what's the best place to hide a dead body would be the second page of Google search results. Nobody ever goes there.
So today we fired half of Twitter, and that should save us, what, $4 billion a year?
No, it's not going to save $4 billion a year. I wish, but I mean, to be frank, Twitter was having pretty serious revenue challenges and cost challenges before the acquisition talks started. And any company that is dependent on advertising has had a hard time. So if you look at, say, Snap or Google, Facebook, whatnot, they've all had a difficult time with advertising revenue dropping. And Twitter is more, currently more vulnerable than they are to advertising, because most of Twitter's advertising is large brand advertising as opposed to direct response. So it's kind of like a much more of a discretionary ad spend than it is for, like if you can do direct response for a specific product. And then we also recently had a lot of difficulty with activist groups pressuring major advertisers to stop spending money on Twitter. This is despite us doing everything possible to appease them and to make it clear that moderation rules and hateful conduct rules have not changed, and we're continuing to enforce them. A number of major advertisers have stopped spending on Twitter. This doesn't seem right, because we've made no change in our operations at all, but nonetheless, the activist groups have been successful in causing a massive drop in Twitter advertising revenue, and we've done our absolute best to appease them, and nothing is working. So this is a major concern, and I think this is, frankly, an attack on the First Amendment. If activist groups can pressure advertisers upon which Twitter is fundamentally dependent to, suppress free speech, then that doesn't seem right.
I meant, by the way, 400 million instead of 4 billion. I meant actually 400 million instead of 4 billion. Okay, so we're now there. You're living at this place. You go there for the next couple, 3 weeks. You're going to vote, and then we have a team lined up. You think you have a team lined up to manage it, and then you would just do it the same way we do with SpaceX and Tesla, where you just attend the meetings regularly, say this is what we need to do. Do it.
Well,
this is what we need.
Yeah, my workload went up from about, 70 to 80 hours a week to probably 120. Yeah, I go to sleep, I wake up, I work, go to sleep, wake up, work, do that 7 days a week. I'll have to do that for a while. No choice. But I think once Twitter is set on the right path, I think it is a much easier thing to manage than SpaceX or Tesla. So, and I really understand the internet and how to make So I wrote software. I wrote software personally for 20 years. I was one of the key people behind X.com, which became PayPal. And so I also I'm aware of I know how to make a way better PayPal.
Because you built PayPal.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. With a lot of other people, but there's a product plan I wrote, which I wish I'd kept a copy of in July of 2000, where I thought it would be possible to make the most valuable financial institution in the world. And we're going to execute that plan from 22 years ago, which amazingly no one has done. And so I think that's part of why I think Twitter will be ultimately extremely valuable, because I'm going to execute the X.com game plan from 22 years ago with some improvements. And then we're also going to obviously make Twitter just a way better system. It stands to reason that if a social media company is not taking steps to make it positive to be on that social platform, then people won't come or they'll leave. So you speak of sort of anti-Semitism or racism or anything like that. Well, if who's going to stay on a platform if that's prevalent? That's
obviously.
Yeah, come on. And apart from its inherent wrongness, who's going to stay on the platform? So you want to be. It needs to be something where, our goal with Twitter is how do we get 80% of America? Maybe not the sort of far left and the far right, but and maybe we don't want them necessarily. But how do we get 80% of the public to join a digital town square and voice their opinion and exchange ideas, and maybe once in a while change their mind?
On occasion.
Yeah, once in a while.
So I read also that you said, and then we'll move off of Twitter, but you said that your goal is you want to make the 20% of people who are on the far right hate you, just like you want to make the 20% of people on the far left hate you. So.
Well, I don't want them to hate me. But I think the extremists, it's just very difficult to satisfy extremists. So unless you fully buy into whatever their dogma is. So, but I'm confident we can satisfy, 80% of America, 80% of the world, but maybe not the 10% most extreme of either side. And I would count that as a great outcome. And I think it is important to have sort of a digital town square where people feel comfortable talking. And I also think it's one of the things that's important is to be able to sort of decide what kind of experience you want to have on Twitter, because some people might say, okay, I want if this was a radio station, I want the easy listening, smooth jazz station. Okay, cool. But that's so you should be able to have that setting for Twitter, and then some people might say no, I want heavy metal thrash. And okay, so now this is going to be sort of, then you don't mind someone saying mean things to you, within the context of the law, and you don't mind engaging in vigorous arguments on Twitter and that kind of thing. But you should be able to kind of pick your preference, and decide if you want sort of full contact battle or do you want no, I just want to look at poppies and flowers and nice landscapes and stuff.
So let's go off Twitter. Two other topics where you had some questions. That number one is logistics. When we're starting to make so many cars by the end of this year, 40,000 cars a week.
I have to be careful of MNPI, but I believe I have said in the past publicly that our aspiration is to reach 40,000 a week by the end of this year.
So if we're doing that, then that means that producing a car every 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And but that's still only 2 million cars a year. There's 100 million cars that are made a year. And so the question So there's presumably capacity to be able to, logistics, to ship all these cars all over the place to have people pick them up where they want them. But not if they all do them in the same week.
Yes, totally. So, I mean, we got a bit of criticism from our Q3 results because we had a lot of cars in transit. And the reason was that we got too big for our cars to actually be transported in the final few weeks. There just weren't enough car carriers and weren't enough ships. So, but it's actually good. It's actually good in the long run to smooth out deliveries and actually have cars in transit at the end of the quarter, because then you're not rushing to get everything delivered by the end of the quarter and paying all these expedite fees. So
my question though is that if we have autonomous driving and we have autonomous trucks, is that one of the ideas that we're going to be able to move things around with our own, if there's not enough drivers, that we're going to have autonomous transport?
Yes.
That's question one.
We can also, yeah, I mean, have if you're in the area, have the car just drive to you.
Right. That's one. And then the other one was about materials. And when all of a sudden, so we have somehow navigated supply chain problems from other people. And you might have thought that it was the absolute brilliance that we had to be able to do that. But probably the reason is that when you start off and you don't make any cars a year and you go to someone and say, we're going to make 20 million cars a year from zero, who's going to believe you and make all the equipment that we need? So as a result of that, you were forced initially to be able to say, okay, we're going to get, we'll vertically integrate. We can't rely on you. We'll do vertical integration. And
yeah,
cut it. Materials.
I can talk longer if you'd like.
Don't shoot messenger.
Talk a little bit longer. Materials. So we have geology. Anyone wants to show us a mine, we got people in mines to figure, who are knowledgeable, and they come to us and say, we can produce this much lithium, this much copper, this much.
Oh, yeah.
We are able to assess that and give contracts to be able to say contractual agreements. Okay, and they'll rely on our agreement. Other people they won't. Is that fair? And Glencore,
well, the scaling constraints change as time goes by. In the beginning, we were just very vertically integrated because suppliers didn't take us seriously. Like we could get hardly any of the best suppliers wouldn't talk to us because the car startup has not been successful in the United States since Chrysler in the 20s, I believe they started. So it's been a century since a car company was successful in the U.S. That was not a foreign car company coming in that was already successful in their home market. So, but for an American car startup, it was Tesla's first success in 100 years. So you can imagine if you're an auto supplier, that doesn't sound like a smart financial decision.
Exactly.
So then we had to just build a lot of the stuff ourselves, be vertically integrated, or we couldn't create the car. And then that ended up being an asset because now we understood so much about the entire supply chain and what it took to build a car. So we were able to design a more integrated vehicle that actually needed far fewer parts and costs less and weighs less and has higher performance. But it is looking increasingly like for some of the critical elements of batteries that Tesla will need to get into the mining business, mining and refining.
That's why Glencore was announced. That's why we're talking to Glencore. We were.
No, and we've never contemplated investing in Glencore. I'm talking about Tesla doing it
Ourselves.
Yes.